There is a jar hanging off the end of my dock on a piece of cord, with a little light burning inside it. The whole arrangement cost me under $10, and most of that was the light. Right now, in the dark under that jar, there is a column of water boiling with life that was not there 2 hours ago, and by midnight there will be more fish stacked under my feet than in the rest of that cove put together. I did not put fish there. I built them a supper table, and they came to it. I want to be plain at the start, because the title of this one deserves an explanation. Nobody outlawed this. Nobody took it away. What happened is quieter than that. Every man on a lake once did this with a kerosene lantern hung off the gunwale, because a lantern was what a man had, and then somewhere along the way the lantern went out of the house, and what replaced it on the shelf was a sealed underwater unit at $80 or $120. And so a thing that used to be free became a thing that had a price on it, and a generation stopped doing it because they thought they could not afford to. You can afford it. It costs almost nothing, and it is the closest thing to a sure trick that I know. I have fished the same water for 51 years, and the best nights of my life on that water all had a light hanging over the side. My grandfather did it with a lantern set on a board across the transom. I remember being 8 or 9 years old and being allowed to stay up for it. And I remember lying on my belly on the boards, looking down into that green cone of light and seeing the water come alive from nothing. And I remember asking him where the fish came from. He said, "They were always here." He said, "We just turned the kitchen light on. Today I'm going to tell you exactly what happens under that light, and in what order, because the order is the whole thing. I'm going to tell you what to hang, and how deep, and how much it costs. And I am going to tell you the one step almost everybody skips, which is the step that decides whether you catch a few or catch all night. Then I'm going to tell you the part that ought to sit uneasy with you, which is that none of this is hidden. It is in every commercial fishery in the world. It is how squid boats have worked for 100 years. Nobody had any reason to explain it to you. Stay with me. The first thing you have to understand is that you are not attracting fish. You are building a food chain, from the bottom up, and it takes about an hour. Here is what actually happens when you put a light on dark water, in order. First, nothing. That is why men give up. Then, within 10 or 15 minutes, the water in that cone begins to fill with specks. Those are zooplankton, the tiny drifting animals that live in every lake in numbers you would not believe. A single gallon of ordinary lake water holds more of them than you would care to think about while you are swimming in it. During the day, they hang deep, away from the light, because everything in that lake eats them. At night, they rise, and they are drawn toward a light the way a moth is, and they gather in the beam in a thick cloud you can see with your own eyes. Then come the minnows and the shad, because a cloud of plankton is a pasture, and they graze it. They arrive in ones and twos, and then in a shoal, and now your cone of light has 100 small fish, turning in it. And then, at the outside edge of that light, in the dark, just past where you can see, the things that eat minnows arrive. Crappie first, usually. White bass, bluegill. Then the catfish underneath, and the bass working the rim. And if you have walleye in your water, they will be there too, sitting just outside the glare. That is the whole thing. You have not called fish. You have started a chain at the bottom. And every link has pulled the next one in. And the last link is the one you came for. It builds itself, in the dark, in about an hour, for the price of a light. And here is why it works so much better at night than anything you can do in daylight. In the day, that plankton is scattered through a whole lake, and the food is everywhere, and the fish are everywhere. At night, you have concentrated the bottom of the food chain into a circle the size of a kitchen table, and everything above it has to come to that circle. You have not just found the fish, you have gathered them. So, what do you hang? Almost anything that makes light and can be kept dry. I am going to give you 3 ways up the ladder, and you can pick your rung. The free one first. Take a glass jar with a good sealing lid. Put a small flashlight or a headlamp inside it, switched on, screw the lid down, tie a cord round the neck under the ring, and lower it into the water. Tie a stone below it, or the jar will float. That is it. That is a submersible light, and it costs you nothing if you already own a torch. The cheap one. A battery lantern or a work light hung from a pole or a dock rail so it shines down onto the water from a foot or 2 above the surface, not in the water at all. This is exactly the lantern method my grandfather used, and it works nearly as well, and it has the advantage that you can see what you are doing. And the $10 one, which is what I use now. A cheap waterproof puck light or a small LED strip meant for a car, wired to a small battery, dropped in on a cord. $10, sometimes less, and it will run all night. Now, about color, because there is a great deal of nonsense talked about this, and I would rather tell you straight. Green and white both work. Green is popular because green light carries a bit further in stained water, and because it looks impressive, and there is something to that. But the honest truth is that brightness and steadiness matter far more than color. And a plain white light left burning for 2 hours will beat a fancy green one that a man keeps switching about. Do not spend money on color. Spend nothing, and leave it on. Where you put it matters as much as whether you put it out at all. Depth first. If the light is going in the water, 2 to 4 feet under the surface is the sweet spot in most lakes, deep enough that the beam spreads through real water instead of skipping off the top, shallow enough that the glow still reaches up and out. If your water is muddy, go shallower, because light does not travel far through mud. If it is clear, you can go a little deeper. Now, before I tell you where in the lake to hang it, do me one small favor. If this is landing for you so far, tap the like button, and if you are not subscribed to this channel, take 3 seconds and do it, and switch the bell on so the next one finds you when it comes out. That is the only thing I will ask you for today. All right, back to the dock. Now the place. Do not hang it out over the deepest hole you can find, which is what most men do because deep sounds serious. What you want is an edge, the lip of a drop-off, so the fish coming up out of the deep have a short trip, the end of a point, the mouth of a cove, alongside a dock or a bridge piling, because those already hold fish. Somewhere between 8 and 20 feet of water is plenty in most lakes. Wind matters too, and this is worth knowing. Set up so the wind is pushing across your light and away from you rather than into your face, because the drift will carry that plankton cloud downwind and stretch your feeding zone out in a long tail instead of piling it against your own boat. That tail is a good place to put a second line if you are allowed more than one. And go early. Have that light burning before full dark. If you turn it on at 10 o'clock, you will spend the first hour of your night waiting for a chain that could already have been built. Now, step 3, and this is the one nearly everybody skips, and it costs nothing at all, and it is worth more than the light itself. Step 3 is that you must not fish in the middle of the light. Here is what men do. They hang the light, the shad show up, and the water underneath is churning with bait, and they drop a line straight down into the brightest part of it. And they catch very little, and they cannot understand it, because they can plainly see fish. But the fish they can see are the bait. The fish they want are not in the light at all. A crappie, a bass, a walleye, a catfish. None of them want to sit in a spotlight where every eye in the lake can see them. They hold in the dark, just outside the rim, facing in, watching that lit-up crowd of minnows the way a man watches a doorway. And they dart in, take one, and go back out. So you fish the edge. Drop your bait at the outer boundary of the glow, right where the light gives up and the dark begins, and hold it there. That is where the ambush is. Every single time. And if you are getting nothing, move out another foot into the dark before you do anything else, because the rim is further out than it looks from where you are sitting, and fish just above them, not below. Those predators sit under the bait and look up, because a fish looking up sees everything against the lighter water, and a fish looking down sees nothing. Set your bait a foot or two above where you think they are holding, and it will be seen. Set it under them, and it might as well not be there. There is the whole difference between a man who hangs a light and catches a few, and a man who hangs a light and does not sit down all night. It is not the light. It is the 2 feet of dark just outside it. 2 smaller things that go with it. Use a small live minnow if you can, because you are fishing a scene that is made entirely of minnows, and there is no sense in offering something that does not belong. And keep your own lights off. A headlamp swinging around, a phone screen, a man walking a dock with a torch, all of that undoes what you have spent an hour building. Set your working light, leave it, and let your eyes get used to the dark. Your eyes will do more in 20 minutes of darkness than you expect. That is the most useful thing I am going to say today, and if it earned its keep, hit the like button and make certain you are subscribed with the bell switched on. It takes 3 seconds, and it is the only reason a fellow talking about a jar on a string ever gets put in front of anybody. Now for the honest part, because I'm not going to sell you something I have to shade the truth about. And there are 4 things you need to hear. The first is the law. And with this one, it is not a small matter. Night fishing itself is prohibited on a good many waters and restricted on more. The use of lights to attract fish is separately regulated in some states, and there are lakes and reservoirs where it is not permitted at all, and there are places where a light on a dock is fine, but a light in a boat is another question. On top of that, a boat on the water after dark has to carry proper navigation lights, and your fishing light does not count as one. Look all of that up on your state wildlife agency page before you go. It takes 4 minutes, and I would far rather you check than take my word and end up in trouble. The second is safety, and I will say it plainly, because I have known men it happened to. Water at night is a different animal. Wear a life jacket, and wear it the whole time, not with it sitting on the seat beside you. Tell somebody where you are and when you will be back. Take a spare torch, because the moment your only light dies is the moment you find out how dark it really is. And a dock at night with a wet board and a man carrying a rod in each hand is a fall waiting to happen. Go slow. The third is that this is a warm water, still water method. It is at its best from late spring through early autumn, in a lake, a reservoir, a big pond, a slow river backwater. It is very good on crappie, white bass, bluegill, catfish, and it will bring bass and walleye to the rim. In cold water, the plankton is not doing what it needs to do, and the whole chain is slower and thinner. In fast current, the plankton will not gather at all, because it simply washes away. And the fourth is about your neighbors and the water itself. Do not shine a bright light into somebody's lakeside window at 11 at night. And do not set up 30 feet from another man who was there first, because you will pull the fish off him, and he will know exactly what you did. And take your battery and your cord and your jar home with you. A light left in a lake is litter, whatever it was doing while it burned. Now, why did they stop telling you about this? Think about what happened to the lantern. There was a time when every household had one, and every boat carried one, and nobody thought of it as fishing equipment at all. Then the lantern left the house. And when somebody worked out that men would still like a light over the water, what appeared on the shelf was not a lantern. It was a sealed submersible attractor at $80, $130, and it came in a package with a picture of a crappie on it. Now, those units are good. I am not going to tell you they are a swindle, because they are not. They are bright, and they are properly waterproof, and they last. But $120 is a wall, and a great many men look at that wall and decide the technique is not for them. And nowhere on that package does it say that a jar and a torch will do most of the same job. And nowhere on that package is the one thing that actually matters, which is that you fish the edge and not the middle. I do not believe anybody held a meeting about this. I want to be clear, because I have no use for that sort of thinking. It is quieter than a conspiracy, and to my mind, worse. Everybody along the line simply has no reason to raise it. The shop does not raise it, because the shop stocks the $100 unit. The magazine does not, because the magazine sells its pages to the company that makes it. The fellow on the television does not, because that company pays him. Nobody has to coordinate a thing. They only have to let a free thing quietly acquire a price, and then say nothing while a generation forgets it was ever free. We kept it, because we had to. When a lantern is what you own, a lantern is what you fish by, and you learn what happens under it, because you are out there under it half the summer. That knowledge never lived in books. It lived in the dark, on the water, with the children allowed up late. I asked my grandfather once, years after that first night, why more men did not do it, since it plainly worked and cost nothing. He thought about it a good while, the way that generation did. Then he said, because it looks like doing nothing. He said, a man will drive an hour and spend $100 before he will sit still for 40 minutes and let a thing build. And then he said the part I have carried ever since, which was, most of what works is slow, and most of what sells is fast. And that is the whole of why you have to be told these things by an old man instead of a shop. I have thought about that most of my life, and I do not believe he was only talking about fishing. If this was worth your evening, do the 3 small things that help. Hit the like button, subscribe to this channel, turn the bell on. That is the whole of it, and it is what puts this in front of the next fellow who thinks a good night on the water has a $100 entry fee. So here is what I want you to do. Check your state rules on night fishing and on lights. Then take a sealing jar and a torch, or a battery lantern, or $10 of waterproof light and a small battery. Hang it 2 to 4 feet down over an edge in 8 to 20 feet of water with the wind crossing away from you, and have it burning before full dark. Then leave it alone for an hour. Kill your other lights and let your eyes settle. And when the bait shows up, do not drop your line into the middle of them. Fish the rim, in the dark just outside the glow, a foot or 2 above where you think they are sitting. Then come back and tell me in the comments what state you are in, what you hung, how long it took before the bait showed, and what came in first when it did. I read every one of them. And the reports folks send back are the reason I keep doing this. Next time I am going to tell you about the 1 hour of the day my grandfather fished, which is not sunrise, and which nearly everybody has backwards. He gave up 2 hours of sleep for years before he worked it out. And once he did, he never fished the other hours again. It costs nothing at all to change. And it will do more for you than any rod you will ever own. Until then, keep your line wet, keep your own light off, and remember that the people who fed their families off this water with their hands knew things we are only just beginning to remember.